Greetings and welcome from the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area. The sun is rising on another beautiful day. Glad everybody's here to join. Awesome. Okay, this is Jump Ball Week here at A Better Official. We're going to look at jump ball rules and restrictions. Start with a masterclass on Monday. Move to case play or rules scenarios on Wednesday for basketball rules expert. And then on Friday, we will look at plays, video breakdown of jump ball scenarios so that we can all get better as basketball officials. Great to see everybody today. Do a little adjustment here. Hope we sound okay. Should be grooving on the technology front. Zooch, you caught me. You caught me with an old graphic. My preparation level today is low. But we're going to power through. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Let's do that. Oh, fastidious. Sound is good. Thank you, Jason. Much appreciated. Jason is in the house, as well as Billy Mack from the small little corner of Connecticut that he occupies. The Zooch jumping in. Chris Janish from South Dakota. Dan Kelly from Northern Virginia. I'm sure within Virginia, the specification that it's north, just like in the California, there's a big difference between Northern California and Southern California. Zooch, I don't know if we're going to need the case play breakdown of the rules book too much on this episode. Chris Denton in the house from North Carolina. My son has moved to South Carolina from Chicago. That's exciting. Look forward to visiting sometime in the near future. All right, fantastic. Hope everybody had a great weekend. So let me ask you this, and put it in the comments below. Did your state do anything differently with jump balls this season? I know a couple of states eliminated a jump ball, gave the ball to the opponent, the visiting team, or had a coin flip or some such, further erosion of the necessity to have jump balls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Let me know in the comments whether you, in your state, did anything differently this year due to COVID restrictions. All right. That is a necessity when visiting my son because he's an avid golfer. Gotcha, Chris. Gotcha. Everything the same. All right, fantastic. All right, let's take a brief rundown of our live schedule. This is for you, Billy. Every Wednesday, basketball rules experts, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Join us live as we look at National Federation of High School Basketball play scenarios, rules and restrictions so that we can become basketball rules experts. Every Friday, 5 Play Friday Live, where we look at plays, analyze, break down, take positives, identify negatives so that we can get better. And then every other Monday, we have a masterclass that usually leads to the topic of the week. This week, of course, we are looking at jump balls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. If you're new to the show, jump in the chat, put new. Let us know where you officiate from. If you're new to me, my name is Greg Austin with thebetterofficial.com. We live stream several times a week here on YouTube. And if you have a comment about anything at any time, put it in the chat. Put your voice in the game so that we can all get better together. All right, fantastic. Went through that pretty smoothly. He's getting more polished. Billy says no change. We should have a vote about rules restrict. They ask every year for people to contribute rules change ideas. And one rules change idea, of course, is to eliminate a jump ball. It's a possible scenario. Possible. They've been restricted, and they happen so infrequently. But today we're going to look at the jump ball rules and restrictions. We're going to go through our standard format for the presentation. My audio support team is available in Walnut Creek. Grace, it's always a delight to see you. Always a delight. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to plow through this puppy. Let's get started. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, get rid of that. Okay. All right. So, in the game of basketball, there are 3 restarts. We have covered in previous master classes the throw-in, and we have covered the free throw. Throw-ins happen a lot in a basketball game. Free throws, not as much, but they are certainly occur many, many times during a game. Jump balls, on the other hand, the third restart, only happens on average once per game. Occasionally you'll go overtime and we'll have a second. So as a result, since it happens so infrequently, officials' understanding of the rules can sometimes be cloudy. And there are, of course, with any of our restarts, there's always factors for the officials to consider which affects their ability to make accurate rulings. With a throw-in, they happen so frequently, many things can occur. With a free throw, they happen frequently, but the officials can sometimes relax and it's a pause in the game. Only one player may be playing basketball at the time. There's a chance for us to check out, so that's our risk. And with the jump ball, since they occur at the very start of the game, the officials are potentially at risk for not quite being ready to go, right? So each of the 3 restarts has its own pitfalls for officials. Today we're going to look at rules and restrictions for jump balls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Radio check. Okay, sound is good. Beautiful. Jump ball rules and restrictions. We'll start out, as we always do, by looking at the definition in Rule 4, the most important rule for new basketball officials. We'll also take a look at the topography, where people go on the court for a jump ball. The restrictions on players, restrictions on the jumper, restriction on the teammates of the jumper, restrictions on opponents of the jumper, and as well, violations which can occur. So we'll look at definition, topography, restrictions, and violations. Today, as we look, let's go back there. Today, as we look at jump ball in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Rule 4, Section 28, jump ball. Article 1, a jump ball is a method of putting the ball into play to start the game and each extra period by tossing it up between 2 opponents in the center restraining circle, or, as in 7-3, before the alternating possession procedure has been established. Article 2, the jump ball begins when the ball leaves the official's hands and ends when the touched ball contacts a non-jumper, an official, the floor, a basket, or backboard. As with any of the 3 restarts, since there are a special set of rules and restrictions that come into play, we need to know when the restart starts, when the restart ends. Because when the restart ends, those restrictions end. And then with any of the 3 restarts, sometimes there are intermediate steps where some restrictions end, some more restrictions end, and then ultimately all restrictions end. So understanding when a jump ball starts, when it ends is critical. The jump ball begins when the ball leaves the official's hands. Okay? Not when they blow their whistle, not when they enter the circle, when the ball leaves their hands, and it ends when one of these conditions is met. The ball contacts a non-jumper, any of the 8 other players on the court, an official, which would also be considered contacting the floor, or a basket or backboard. Contacting any of those things ends the jump ball, right? So we know when it starts, we know when it ends, we are ahead of the game. All right, let's take a look at the court. Where can the players be during a jump ball? Right, here's our standard National Federation of High School Basketball court. And if we look at positioning potentially of players, right, we have our 2 jumpers. We have an official who's going to administer the jump ball. Let's see. Let's do this. No? Mm-hmm. Okay. I need my big mouse. Ay, ay, ay. So we have 2 jumpers. They must each be in the semicircle that they are responsible. We have the official tossing. We have players along the circle, just adjacent to the circle. There's different restrictions for these players. And then we have other players who are at various parts of the court. We will cover restrictions as we move forward on those players. Oh, well, I can point. See this guy right here? And this guy? Oh, it's hard. Oh, like a weatherman. We got a front moving in. Wait. We have a front. Oh, come on. We have a front moving in, right? Here. From here over to here. Yeah. All right. Cool. Okay, so players, where they can be on the court, we'll cover that when we get to the restrictions. The jump ball rules really revolve around the restrictions in Rule 6. That's what we'll cover next. Do that. Let's look at those restrictions now. Rule 6-3, jump ball administration. This is where the rubber meets the road in terms of restrictions during a jump ball. And this is what we need to understand completely in order to adjudicate these plays properly. Article 1, for any jump ball, each jumper must have both feet within that half of the center restraining circle, which is farther from his or her basket. So our jumpers have a restriction just like our jumpers have a restriction just like a free thrower has a restriction that their feet must be within the free throw semicircle. Our jumpers in this instance must be within their semicircle, which they are designated on the play. Article 2, when the official is ready and until the ball is tossed, non-jumpers must not A, move onto the center restraining circle, B, change position around the center restraining circle. right? So we know what the restriction of the jumpers are. Non-jumpers are restricted from moving onto the circle after the official is ready. The official is instructed to blow their whistle, enter the circle, release the ball. Pardon me. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. All right. So once the official is ready and until the ball is tossed. So we're talking about a brief period of time. The official sounds their whistle, may say something like, everybody be ready, here we go, whatever. They step into the circle and they release. During that interval, players may not move onto the semicircle, meaning in the spots around the semicircle, and players who are on, the circle, and players who are on the circle are not allowed to change position. So those players who are on the circle, it would be appropriate if we were to say, hold your spot, okay? Which many officials say, referring to players all around the court, but that's another story. So players on the circle must maintain their position. Players off the circle are not allowed to move onto the circle during that brief interval that's only between when the official is ready and when they release. Okay, so we've clarified that. Let's look at Article. Oh, I see. Let's look at Article 3. Teammates may not occupy adjacent positions around the center restraining circle if an opponent indicates a desire for one of the positions before the official is ready to toss the ball. So opponents, if there are teammates of the thrower who are in adjacent positions, an opponent can say, hey, I want that spot between you, right? And they are allowed that by rule. That we clarify that. Article 4, the ball must be tossed upward between the jumpers in a plane at right angles to the sidelines. The toss must be to a height greater than either of them can jump so that it will drop between them. Basically indicating that the official needs to have a good toss, right? The toss needs to be between the players, straight up, not at an angle, not going back, not going forward, etc. We want a ball that is fair for the players to have equal access to on the jump ball. Article 5, until the tossed ball is touched by one or both jumpers, non-jumpers must not. Okay, so now we're working into the area we covered the brief time frame between when the official is ready and when they release the toss, and now we're talking about a situation until the tossed ball is touched. So now we're talking about after the ball is released and until it is touched by one or both jumpers, non-jumpers must not A, have either foot break the plane of the center restraining circle cylinder, or B, take a position in any occupied space. Okay, so once the ball is released by the tossing official, players may not break the plane until the ball is touched. Once the ball is touched, that restriction goes away. Okay, so we have a restriction on non-jumpers. When the official is ready, moving in, there's restrictions. When they release the toss until it's touched, there are additional restrictions. And then let's move now to further restrictions. Article 6, the tossed ball must be touched. The tossed ball must be touched by one or both of the jumpers after it reaches its highest point If the ball contacts the floor without being touched by at least one of the jumpers, the official must toss it again. Pretty straightforward. Basically, our jump ball has to be touched. If it gets if both players whiff on it and nobody touches the ball and it falls to the floor, then we're going to re-jump. And also puts our restriction now on the jumpers. What can they do? What can they not do? They cannot contact the ball until it reaches its highest point. They cannot steal the tap, steal the jump by tapping it early. And we see that. That's not an uncommon violation. All right. Article 7, neither jumper shall, now these are restrictions on the jumper, neither jumper shall A, touch the tossed ball before it reaches the highest point, B, leave the center restraining circle until the ball has been touched, C, catch the ball before the jump ball ends, or D, touch the ball more than twice. Okay, so restrictions on the jumper. Let's do this. I'm going to go back. Restriction on the jumper. Jumper cannot contact the ball before it's reached its highest point. Violation on a jumper. Leave the center restraining circle until the ball has been touched. So jumpers are not required to jump. Jumpers are not required to face the jump ball or the official. They can turn their back. Okay, they are required to be in their semicircle. And now the rule states that they are required to be within that semicircle until the ball is touched. So they can't bail early and try to steal where the where the opponent is tapping the ball to. On Friday, we'll have a great play scenario where that occurs. In addition, the jumper cannot catch the ball before the jump ball ends. Okay, they could ultimately catch the ball, but only after the jump ball ends. We have defined when a jump ball ends, and the jumper is not allowed to touch the ball more than twice. So if a jumper touches the ball for the third time, that's a violation by rule. Okay, so now we've talked about the restrictions on players, non-jumpers, on the circle during a brief interval between the time the official is ready and the time that they toss the ball. We've talked about restrictions on non-jumpers when the ball has been released and before the ball has been contacted. And now we've talked about restrictions on the jumpers themselves. We've also clarified by definition when the jump ball begins and when the jump ball ends. So now we have the basic information that we need in order to adjudicate plays properly. Article 8, the jump ball and the restrictions end when the touch ball contacts one of the 8 non-jumpers, an official, the floor, a basket, or backboard. Note, during a jump ball, a jumper is not required to face his or her own basket, provided he or she is in the proper half of the center restraining circle. The jumper is also not required to jump and attempt to touch the tossed ball. However, if neither jumper touches the ball, it should be tossed again, with both jumpers being ordered to jump and try to touch the ball. I have never had that scenario. It's possible, I suppose, where neither jumper says, I'm not going to, no, you jump. I'm not going to jump. You jump. No. Okay, somebody's got to jump and touch the ball. And this is one of my favorite Rule 9 violations. Rule 9-2, throw-in provisions. A player must not violate any provision of the jump ball. If both teams simultaneously commit violations during the jump ball, or if the official makes a bad toss, the toss must be repeated. The penalty, the ball is dead when the violation occurs and is awarded to the opponents for a throw-in from a designated out-of-bounds spot nearest the violation. right? My favorite violation is one that says it's a violation to violate all the provisions, any of the provisions of another rule that we've already outlined. Don't have to get into a lot of detail here. We've outlined the provisions in Rule 6-3. Any violation of the provisions is a violation by rule. The penalty is awarding the ball to the opponents at a spot nearest the violation. All right. Okay, so we have our court. Give me just a second here. I see. Let's do this. Not a great color. Hold on. Let's go purple. All right, so let's cover some of the topography here. Let's start by looking here. This is a designated lane space. And what are the characteristics of the designated lane space? It is 3 foot by 3 foot. It is defined by the tick marks on the lane line. When we come to a jump ball restraining the jump ball circle, we have similar lanes or spaces which the players are allowed to occupy, except rather than being fixed and specific, if I go here, yeah, rather than being fixed and specific, they basically float around the circle, and they're defined by where a player stands. So if this player in red establishes themselves in that spot, their opponent can have the adjacent spot. Okay, there's no marks, there's no tick marks, it's ethereal, as it were. These players here would be players who are on the circle. They have restrictions as players who are on the circle. These players here are not on the circle, and therefore their restrictions are not the same as players on the circle. Where's my ref? I've lost my ref. Okay, tremendous. So let's review the restrictions. Jumper must be within their semicircle, and this jumper must be within their semicircle. Players on the circle, once the official is ready and before they release the ball, the toss, these players are not allowed to move along the semicircle. So once the official blows their whistle, they step into toss. This player could not reposition over to here. They are restricted against that. Once the ball is released on the toss, that restriction goes away. Let's also remember that if there was a red player here and the white player said, hey, I want that spot between you guys, they are allowed that by rule. Okay. Also, during that time when the official is ready to go and they step in and before they release the ball, a player may not move onto the semicircle or move onto the circle. That restriction exists for players who are not already on. So you non-jumpers cannot move onto the semicircle, the circle, and players on the circle may not move on the circle once that interval has begun where the official is ready and before they reach before they toss the ball. Now, once the official steps in and they toss the basketball, these players may not break the plane of the circle until the ball is contacted by either of the jumpers. They're not allowed to move on. A jumper may not leave the circle until the ball is touched by a jumper. Okay, those restrictions exist. Players, yeah. But let's remember there's no restriction on where these players are relative to each other, right? If the player in red is in front of the player in white, there is no restriction against that. We see that constantly where officials say, hey, you guys, hey, you got to be side by side back here, right? That's just not a thing. That's not a thing. That restriction would apply to players on the circle. These players have restrictions that are different than these players. Huh. Fancy drawing. Billy Mack, there's your table. That doesn't answer your question, though. All right. Okay. I'm going to go there. All right. So today we've covered the definition of a jump ball, one of the 3 restarts in the game of basketball. This is not the most common. And yet, it has rules and restrictions. We need to know those rules and restrictions, and we need to be ready to adjudicate plays when they start. Let's remember, when a jump ball occurs at the start of a game, which is 95% of all jump balls occur at the start of the game, officials have to always ask themselves, are they really ready to officiate? Can they properly adjudicate rules violations during a jump ball? They're so infrequent, we're at risk of forgetting about them. We're at risk of not being quite prepared when we see something to process and make the ruling, but we need to be that. And remember, all of these rules restrictions are going to appear on certification tests. We need the rules knowledge when it comes to adjudicating these plays. So today we've covered jump balls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Join us Wednesday when we look at play scenarios where we can put the rules into practice, and on Friday when we look at plays to see how the violations can possibly occur, how unusual things can happen that aren't always violations, and so that we can all get better as basketball officials. Thanks for joining us today. You can always reach out to us at abetterofficial.com with any questions or comments. Appreciate you joining us today, and have a great day. All right. How long did that take? Man, that was yammering for quite a while. Anything I failed to cover, let me know. Jason, what was the question? I'm too far behind on the comments. I can't possibly catch up. Owned 106. I'll tell you what, we'll get to how to assess a tee a bit later. Doug Johnson from Arkansas in the house. I am going to get to those state final games and start pulling plays from those. And got some great online video from those. Umar's in the house. Martin, excellent. Right. So the other thing, of course, is that jump ball rules at different levels are different, right? So when you see a jump ball in the NBA, right, the jump ball to start the game, very low stress. And that really reflects National Federation of High School. The jump ball to start the game is really just almost ceremonial. some teams say, okay, we're going to run a play, we're going to get an advantage, we're going to have our players go, etc. And that's important to them, and that's all good. But most often in games, it's just a matter of the two players who are jumping really want to compete for the basketball, right? It's just like a chance to get going, etc. The game, everybody in the gym just wants the game to get started. We look at an NBA game, right? And we'll have a play on Friday. Late in the game, they don't have an alternating possession arrow. We have a jump ball at either one of the free throw semicircles, maybe, and you have incredibly large human beings all around the circle, right? It's much more what used to be in olden days, where teams are positioned to gain control of the basketball. It's very important, etc. They're jostling for position. They're doing things potentially illegal on the circle, but basically everybody's on the circle. There's a mass of humanity in close, right? Very different from usual jump ball scenarios to start games. But NBA has a jump ball to start the game. And then in the fourth period, the team that wins the toss gets the throw in to start the period, and the second and third periods go to the opponent who or some such. I think FIBA does something similar. We have a jump ball in FIBA. I think they have a jump ball to start the game, and then it's alternating possession thereafter. Somebody could clarify that. But we have different rules at different levels. When we see those jump balls at free throw lines in NBA, it's fascinating and gives you an idea of maybe a throwback to high school rules as they used to be in olden times. Right, Billy? Yeah. I mean, basically, that's what the jump ball has become. And if I was to encourage officials as to what they should focus on, there are 3 restarts in the game of basketball. One of them happens 50 times a game, and one of them happens 1 time a game. I'd say become an expert, dominate the one that happens 50 as opposed to the one that happens 1. And the other factor is jump ball restrictions. Let's take a poll of 25 coaches and give them a little rules test about jump ball restrictions. They are not experts at the rules, right? So that's our fallback position. Ancient times. Yeah. Summer League, that jump ball is, and intense jump ball situations are great. And of course, to start the game, we want to have a great toss. We want to, we're excited about getting going in the game, and we want to have a great toss, and that's all good. If the toss, unless something dramatic happens, we have gotten the game going, and that's our main focus at that point. But if we're in an overtime game or a double overtime game, right, a little more intensity, a little more. It's not crucial. But when we look at plays and we find plays with under a minute in an overtime in an NBA Finals, boy, that's an intense jump ball scenario. Intense. Yeah, we want a smooth start to our game, right? And we want to have our rules knowledge so that we don't, again, certification tests, we need our rules knowledge and rules restrictions. Cool. Okay. All right. So you may have noticed I did something a little bit different this time. I've learned my lesson is when in previous master classes, I was attempting to, let's see. I was attempting to read the rules while on camera. What a disaster, right? Just read the, it's so, there's no advantage gained to having somebody's face on the screen reading a rule if they're not looking at the camera. So learn that lesson. Try to get better, and we're still have a lot of room for improvement. That's all I can say. It'll look better when it's edited. It is what it is. All right. So, we're going to make it a short one today. Owned 106. Okay. Owned 106. Could you show me how to give out a technical foul? If we are going to assess a technical foul, right, there is a indication by the official, right? We've assessed a technical foul. If we give it to a coach, as you say, Owned, we're working hard here. Can't always get to comments immediately. Who can attempt the free throws when we assess technical foul to a coach? Who can attempt technical foul free throws? Any player or eligible substitute may attempt those free throws. So, who are players? Those are the people who are in the game. Those are team members who are in the game. There are 5 of them. Any of them may attempt, or an eligible substitute. If there's a technical foul, a player can come in from the bench and attempt the technical foul free throws. If there are multiple technical foul free throws, which by rule there would be, one player can attempt the first one, one player can attempt the second one. There's no restriction against. Hope that answers your question. Remember the villa. We'll always have the villa. Billy, I can appreciate it. I mean, my fundamental belief, me personally, jump ball, just get the game going. Call the obvious. Be ready to officiate. If it's marginal, maybe we let it go. Let's just get the game going. So I am with you 100%. Les, I did a poor job of putting the loading to YouTube that there would be a live stream. So that's on me. Clearly. And remember, we had a 5-play Friday 6 or 8 weeks ago, and we had 2 players, the ball is tapped, it's loose, it's on the floor, 2 players have a held ball situation. They should have been the players to re-jump. Instead, the 2 original jumpers. Anyway, the official on the first one had the whistle out of his mouth. On the second one, had the whistle in his mouth. Obviously, a super risky scenario. Good friend of mine a couple of years ago had a jump ball scenario. One of the players caught him flush in the face and concussed him. So we are at risk. We see that we need to protect ourselves in a jump ball scenario. Could have a banner on the wall at the gym. This jump ball sponsored by John Smith Dentistry. Oh. That's the question. Yeah, Jason. So our depth restriction is a 3 foot. The spot is the space rather is a 3 foot by 3 foot area. And again, it's flexible. Players can move around the circle, and the spot and the space moves with them, as it were. That's one of the things that's very different about a jump ball scenario, but it's also one of the things that if we take that 3 foot by 3 foot square and take it with us, then, and just recognize that it's flexible where it can be, it can help us visualize and interpret the rules. Yeah, so we see all sorts of bad behavior. I could not believe it in a summer league game, right? These young officials are working these summer league games are obviously in the mode of really trying to impress. Here, give me just a second. Are really trying to impress, right? They're fighting for jobs, etc. But this official, before she walked into the semicircle, she indicated to players that were, about 25 feet away, that one player could not be in front of the other player. I was amazed to see that. But it can also be a habitual action. And something that officials do that's a habitual action, and you could say, okay, that's a positive, that's a negative, is that they are kind of marking their territory, right? They like, some officials like to come in and say, I want to give somebody an instruction. Hey, tuck that in. Hey, do this, do this, do this, right? It just sort of gives them the new sheriff in town vibe, like they're there to officiate this game. Not a trait of mine. I'm not a fan of that activity of being officious, but I think some officials like to do it just to get themselves, into the game and ready to go. Okay. All right. Billy Mack is going to have a masterclass on geometry in our next episode. Now, I suppose we could take one of the spaces and just sort of sink it in. I wonder if the line was 2 inches, Billy, and it's curved, if we could sink that space in and so that it's consumed by the line. That would be an excellent math problem. That's your homework assignment. Curved boundaries. I can do that. But I am not a fan of the do not move. It's a habitual thing, right? So officials learn things. I learned it from that old guy who taught me this, and I've always done it, and nobody's ever said anything, right? I tell the players, hey, nobody move, everybody up, right? Because that's just what I do. And the only people who know that it's in error is usually the young officials who are like, what are you talking about, dude? Umar, how are you? I'm sure there's an overlap. I'm sure, just like there would be on that space over the. There's an overlap. Ouch. Less ouch. Trying to stay. I appreciate it. Yeah, so you see some officials come in and they go two-hand, right? But that really prevents their ability to protect themselves. I am much more of I insert myself sideways, toss, and turn, just as a default mechanism to protect myself. I love it. I love it. Have fun. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's a great vibe. That's a very different vibe. I mean, what I'll say is I'll enter. I say, before I enter, I'll bounce the ball, crack the whistle, and say, everybody ready? Right? Just gives everybody a chance to, it's a way to give presence to the game that I think is better than, hey, you don't move. Don't, right? Umar. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. We're approaching the 1 hour mark. I am going to wrap it. I am going to wrap it. We got lots to do today. Join us Wednesday. Boom, 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 boom. If I went, where could I go? Yeah. Join us Wednesday for Basketball Rules Expert. And then on Friday for 5 Play Friday, we'll look at jump ball plays. It's really helpful to see plays when these rules are arcane and restrictive. We don't see a lot of them, right? So getting reps on video is helpful when we see the plays occur on video. If you have any great videos, you can always send us to us at abetterofficial.com/submitplays. But I've got some good ones queued up. Ty, thank you for joining. Awesome. I'm going to go there. And I'm going to say, gents, I will wrap it up. Make it a great day. Do something for somebody that couldn't possibly repay you, and you guarantee that's the fact. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday for Basketball Rules Expert. Take care.